Welcome to my channel MBBS Buddy. Today we are going to talk about diabetic ketoacidosis. Diabetic ketoacidosis is mostly a complication of type 1 DM. As we know, in type 1 DM there is destruction of the beta cells. The precipitating factors of decay include too little or no insulin intake, infections, severe stress which may be physical or emotional, and drugs like thiazides and corticosteroids. Now let us discuss about the pathogenesis of decay. The diabetic ketoacidosis results from insulin deficiency and glucagon excess. So both of this has a role to play in it. What are the consequences of insulin deficiency? First, we'll have hyperglycemia resulting in a hyperosmolar state, which will lead to osmotic diuresis. There will be volume depletion and dehydration, right? Now basically all the volume and the water is drawn out. That is the reason we are having polyuria, polydipsia, etc. Then also there is activation of lipolysis in adipose tissue. Due to this activation of lipolysis in adipose tissue, there is release of increased amount of free fatty acids into plasma, which are then taken up by the liver. Under normal circumstances, basically what insulin does is it inhibits lipolysis. But when there is insulin deficiency, of course, there is activation of lipolysis. Now, consequences of glucagon excess. Accelerated hepatic gluconeogenesis and impaired peripheral utilization of glucose. This results in severe hyperglycemia. Again, as we discussed, there will be hyperglycemia inducing an osmotic diuresis. There will be volume depletion and dehydration. Second, now this is a very important aspect in diabetic ketoacidosis, that is, there is activation of ketogenic process resulting in ketosis and metabolic acidosis. The excess glucagon causes a resetting of the hepatic metabolism of free fatty acids. This is achieved through an increased activity of the enzyme which is known as the carnitine acyl transferase. The hepatic mitochondria then it converts the free fatty acids into ketone bodies which accumulate in the body fluids. The ketone bodies mainly include acetoacetic acid and beta hydroxybutyric acid, but to a minor amount there is acetone also. That is the reason why we get a fruity odor. The two strong acids, that is the acetoacetic acid and the beta hydroxybutyric acid, are actually responsible for the acidotic state. So in this acidotic state, what is going to happen? The acids will dissociate, and this is what is going to cause release of hydrogen in the body fluids with the resultant decrease in pH. The fall in pH is actually normal under normal circumstances is countered by the buffers, but that is especially bicarbonate. But in this case, the fall in pH is so much that the bicarbonate is all used up. So this is the flowchart for the pathogenesis. Here we can see in the insulin deficiency causing activation of lipolysis and then resulting in increased hepatic FFA concentration, accelerated ketogenesis, then insulin deficiency also causing hyperglycemia, leading to osmotic diuresis, volume depletion and dehydration. And also there is glucagon excess. As we all know, it causes activation of the enzyme carnitine acetyl transferase and acyl transferase, which at last results in accelerated ketogenesis state. Now let us look into the clinical features. Under clinical features, we have anorexia, nausea, vomiting, and increased rate of urine formation. Again, as we discussed above, that due to the hyperglycemia state due to osmotic diuresis, we have increased rate of urine formation. We have abdominal pain. Then there is altered consciousness of frank coma, which may occur in untreated cases. Also, there is Kussmaul's breathing and a fruity odor to the breath due to acetone. There is signs of volume depletion and dehydration leading to vascular collapse and renal failure. The body temperature may be normal or low in uncomplicated decay, and leukocytosis is a feature of decay per se, and it may not indicate that there is infection. Now, what are the complications we might encounter in the diabetic ketoacidosis? We may have acute gastric dilatation. Cerebral edema is one of the most important features. Hyperkalemia, hypokalemia, hypoglycemia, infections, insulin resistance, myocardial infarction, again one of the most important complications, and rest, ARDS, and vascular thrombosis. In cerebral edema, we'll have an onset of headache, gradual deterioration in level of consciousness, seizures, pupillary changes, papilloedema, elevation in blood pressure, and also respiratory arrest. What are the investigations we do to confirm it is a case of diabetic ketoacidosis? The investigations are very logical. That is, obviously we'll do an urine examination which shows glucose and ketones. Plasma glucose will be high. Plasma ketone values are also going to be high. Plasma potassium levels are high. This is the reason being that this is due to metabolic acidosis, which shifts potassium from intracellular compartment to extracellular compartment, because normal or raised in the initial stage despite a total body deficit, because plasma potassiums are normal or raised in the initial stage despite a total body deficit, but this is due to metabolic acidosis, which shifts potassium from intracellular compartment to the extracellular compartment. The level drops once the treatment is commenced. Again, plasma sodium levels are low. This is why, because the patient will have nausea, vomiting, etc., so there will be loss of sodium. Then serum phosphorus level may be high initially despite a total body deficit, as we discussed above, that plasma bicarbonate levels are going to be low because they are used up. So and a value less than 12 millimole per liter indicates severe acidosis, and the hydrogen ion concentration of the blood is also raised and the pH becomes low. Blood urea nitrogen is going to be high, and serum amylase may be raised, because especially if it is associated with the presence of pancreatitis. But what is the main diagnostic criteria we use to diagnose DKA? The values are very important. Blood glucose greater than 250 mg per dl, arterial pH less than 7.3, serum bicarbonate less than 15 milliequivalent per liter, and moderate degree of ketonemia and or ketonuria. The anion gap greater than 12 equivalent per liter is usually present in DKA patients. A very side note, about the nitroprusside test. The nitroprusside test underestimates the severity of ketoacidosis, and it does not recognize the presence of beta hydroxybutyric acid, which is the main ketotic acid in DKA, and obviously it does recognize acetoacetate, but it may not be elevated until later in the course of the illness. So nitroprusside test is not that much reliable. Now, after investigation and we have diagnosed DK, what should we do to manage the patient? See, the general thing is that the patient should be managed keeping in check amounts and timing of insulin, fluids, vital signs, urine output, and blood chemistries include glucose, sodium, potassium, bicarbonate, urea, and ketones. This is the obvious thing. What are the specific things we are doing to manage the patient? First is fluid replacement. See, the usual fluid deficit in DK is actually around 3 to 5 liters. So what do? We give 1 to 2 liters of isotonic saline, which should be given rapidly intravenously on admission within 1 hour. Then after you have given it, then you do a general assessment and determine by urine output and clinical assessment of the fluid state, do you need to give additional amounts. Generally, what do? We give another additional 1 to 2 liters is administered over the next 2 hours, not 24, next 2 hours. Now you switch to 0.45% sodium chloride after an initial bolus if the serum sodium is high or normal. And when plasma glucose falls to less than 250 mg per dl, we switch over to 5% glucose saline solution, which should be given to prevent cerebral edema and also control ketogenesis. We switch over to this 5% glucose saline solution because we are also giving concomitant insulin therapy. We are also have started insulin therapy to prevent the cerebral edema and control ketogenesis. So, and if the blood glucose now drops below 150 mg per dl despite administration of 5% dextrose saline, we then again switch it up to 10% dextrose should be started instead of reducing the dose of insulin. So our main importance is we maintain the dose of insulin so that the ketogenic state and cerebral edema is treated. We can alter the amount of dextrose we are giving. Now, regarding insulin therapy, it is started about an hour after IV fluid replacement is started, and DKA should be treated with regular insulin, preferably IV, may also be intramuscular, but never you give subcutaneous. A reasonable goal is that the goal which you should keep is that to maintain a plasma glucose of around 200 mg per dl. In most patients can be treated by low-dose insulin schedules in which 8 to 10 units of regular insulin is infused intravenously each hour. At present, a priming bolus dose is not recommended. Right, and some patients may not have respond to insulin and they have very high insulin resistance. So in those cases, what you give more amount of insulin. In patients with established diabetes, subcutaneous long acting insulin like insulin glargine, detamir, or stay should be initiated at the dose that was used prior to the manifestation of decay. Now potassium replacement also is done, right? But the initial potassium level is often high despite a total body deficit because of severe acidosis. With the initiation of the therapy, there is reversal of acidosis. Again, the potassium level may fall. So after 3-4 hours, when plasma potassium levels drop, potassium supplementation should commence at this stage. If during the time of admission we have checked that potassium value is normal or low, we cannot take any risk. Potassium should be given early to prevent hypokalemia, which can predispose to cardiac arrhythmias. In severe hypokalemia, insulin is started only after potassium replacement is under the way. So our main thing is we are obviously want to prevent the cardiac arrhythmias. So if when the patient is admitted, if the patient has a normal or already low, we have to start potassium replacement. So it is also forms an important part of decay therapy. Now bicarbonate therapy, obviously the bicarbonate ions are being used up because of severe acidosis. So what do we give? We basically give an infusion of isotonic of sodium bicarbonate 1.4%, and once the pH of 7 is reached or 7.2 is reached, then we stop. And but below, when it is below 6.9, and especially if there is hypotension or coma, we should start the bicarbonate therapy. And for prevention of cerebral edema, which is one of the main things in BK, include avoidance. You have to avoid excessive hydration and rapid reduction of plasma osmolarity, a gradual decrease in serum glucose, and maintenance of serum glucose. The values again are very important, 250 and 300 mgdl. So you have to maintain the serum glucose between this value until and unless the osmolarity is normalized and mental status is improved. If you see that patients are going for any very severe cases of cerebral edema, you have to give mannitol infusion and mechanical ventilation are suggested for treatment of cerebral edema. Also, initiate oral feeds when nausea and abdominal pain subside. Give a dose of regular insulin subcutaneously before stopping intravenous insulin. Prognosis. We know the major cause of death in DK is myocardial infarction, and other causes being infection, particularly pneumonia and cerebral edema in children. And poor prognostic signs at admission include if during admission the patient already has hypotension, azotemia, is in deep coma, or there is any associated illness. Thank you.